more about the sort of the automation and how you could make use of automation, I suppose, to help with channel shift and advocacy adoption. So I just want to share my screen quickly, just to talk you through a few things from our perspective. Just bear me 2 seconds. Is everyone seeing Meet, Nudge and Shift slide okay there? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I suppose as part of our experience in the sector of working for 16 plus years on digital solutions in the housing space, kind of pairing that with our other side of the business, which is inbound marketing and marketing automation, which we tend to usually use outside of the sector in a more sort of commercial setting, but we are a HubSpot Diamond partner, which makes us one of the highest accredited in the country in terms of the HubSpot side of things. So yeah, as part of kind of combining those expertise and creating solutions to help solve problems for housing associations, we've arrived at this, which is Nudge and Shift. So achieving positive user growth across your digital platforms, from customer portals to sort of website engagements, is often number one sort of priority in terms of getting ROI on those. The only way that these become sort of worthwhile is basically if they're used, and if they're actually used quite widely across the customer base as well. They're obviously there in place to sort of help turn your customers into advocates, to free up your time, which in turn is going to save you money, free up your internal resource to spend with people who need it most, which we kind of covered at the start a little bit. But yeah, just to quickly touch upon this. So as an agency, we've been working for over 16 years in this space. And we're at the point now where we're tailoring solutions based upon problems which we're coming across in the housing space. And the past few years, that's been building customer portals and creating integrations between systems, and ultimately creating things which accelerate channel shift, which is where we've got to with Nudge and Shift, which is almost kind of the next step in the process. So Nudge and Shift are there to sort of help solve that problem of you've invested into the website, into the portal, but what actually happens next? How do you drive these customers to register, and how do you ensure that they engage with these platforms ongoing when they've been so used to sort of more traditional methods over the years? And as we mentioned at the start, we kind of talk about three pots almost of the customer base here. One being those who will jump at the chance of engaging digitally with you. They'll jump straight into the portal, register right away, and they'll use that right away. You've got the other pot which are resistant potentially, or even for whatever reason from their perspective may be unable to engage with digitally. And then there's those sort of in the middle, they're kind of a sweet spot almost, who are potentially willing, they're able to, they just need a bit of a nudge in the right direction. And that's kind of our thought process behind this. So before I get into it, I'm just going to play a short video just kind of to explain from a high level the thoughts behind it, and then I'll go into it a bit more detail shortly.
Have you built a new portal or website but your customers just haven't come? It's crazy to think that over 55% of housing customers are yet to even think about self-serve channels. Did you know a customer that calls is a costly customer? £3.39 per call. But a customer that chooses digital as their channel of choice costs less than 8 pence per interaction. That's 42 times more interactions digitally than over the phone. What could your organisation do with all that freed up time? Help the people that need it most. Channel Shift is all about making your digital channels so simple, easy and appealing that they become the channel of choice for your customers. So why not put your foot down? 20 years in the making, our accelerated Channel Shift innovations have been designed to help you shift further and faster than ever before. By now, most of us are well aware that the two key phases of Channel Shift are adoption and advocacy. Adoption's just the starting point, but let's think about the bigger picture. How are you planning on achieving your Channel Shift objectives? Better still, what's your plan for converting adopters into advocates? Meet Nudge and Shift, advanced customer engagement campaigns that seamlessly work alongside what you've already got. Nudge kickstarts the initial adoption using clever tech and optimization so customers can see just how easy it is to register and interact online. If you're ready to take it up a gear, Shift learns and understands how your customers engage with your platforms. By combining Shift with Nudge, you'll get best-in-breed automation, data-driven insights, and closed-loop reporting. You'll get your very own Shiftometer dashboard, providing a snapshot of how well your Nudge and Shift campaigns are performing behind the scenes with clear metrics for at-a-glance reporting.
Okay. So hopefully that
Have you built a new portal or website but your customers just haven't come? It's crazy to think that over 55% of housing customers are yet...
There we go. I just move over to the next slide. So yeah, essentially, that's nudge and shift kind of in a nutshell, really. So coaching your customers on the benefits of engaging digitally in a very targeted way, and meaning the message and the content speaking to each of those customers is based upon their specific situation and their scenario, which on the face of it sounds like a really huge manual kind of and large kind of resource intensive task, doesn't it? Which is where the purpose of automation technology kind of comes in, really. So at scale, we can encourage these customers to register to begin with, and then become repeat users after that, without you actually having to put those sort of masses of internal resource in, when ultimately yours and your colleagues' time is best spent elsewhere. So just to go into a bit more detail as to what this is. So Nudge is all about adoption. It's focused on getting registrations on your portal, which can be quite a tricky sort of phase for that sort of middle pot of people we touched on before. So these are always on engagement campaigns, which will build and deliver, essentially supercharging your website and your portal into a registration machine, if you like. So when this is sort of suitable to use, Nudge is ideal if your housing association has already started on your digital transformation journey. You've got your portal up and running already, and the current sort of big goal at the minute is to drive adoption to these platforms, creating the digital channel shift sort of effect, if you like. Whereas Shift, a little bit more advanced, that's the sort of the next step in the process. This is the one which helps encourage customers to use those digital channels over and over again, shifting that preference to digital being the channel of choice, in essence. So this one includes closed loop reporting, enable us to target registered users who are inactive digitally, and integrations involved in this one. But yeah, Shift is there to help with that goal of getting more active users rather than just the initial sort of registration. So this is the scenario where you're happy with the number of registered users you have, but potentially the call volumes and sort of manual interactions haven't dropped that much, which would kind of tell us that, you know, people clearly aren't using the portals to pay their rent, to report repairs, to book repairs, schedule to book ASB potentially. So yeah, in this scenario, you're sort of interested in stronger, more detailed insights on the digital customer journey as a whole, and it's a case where you need to start demonstrating the ROI on the initial investments on the portal itself, which is, you know, a whole part of the sort of operational efficiencies drive. So what these actually look like in terms of deliverables and how this works is Nudge is adoption and customer registration focused. We'll put together a 12-month Nudge strategy, the solution and insights behind that as well. This will include the campaign execution from us, which is sort of targeted around awareness, engagement, and that initial registration, as I say. And that comes in the form of optimized email templates and content. It comes in the form of on-page conversion tactics powered by automation, so they're specific to the users. And also that comes with a Nudge reporting dashboard as well. So in terms of looking into performance, where you're up to with registration and insights on the adoption goals, that's all sort of handled in there. And then Shift, yeah, as I say, this is customer engagement focused. This is around the advocacy rather than the initial adoption registration. So the Shift strategy is solution, insights, and integration with systems as well. And those data integrations allow us to put together the closed loop reporting and execute campaigns which are based on re-engagement and that long-term advocacy as well. So the data-driven multi-channel customer journeys, and you'll also, this one, there's obviously sort of a dashboard in here as well to monitor performance as you saw in the video, but this is more around the engagement of active users and how many people are interacting with what and how often, rather than just those sort of numbers earlier on Nudge, which is essentially registration numbers. So it can be quite difficult to put a number on digital channel shift generally. So visit our calculator on getshifting.co.uk, pop your numbers in there, and you can sort of see from a high level, you know, how much your association could be saving with increased digital engagement with your customers, basically.
We know obviously that cold cost savings are not always the be all and end all, and they're not always the single driver of this kind of self-service solution, but actually it does give you a good indicator that can support, you know, business cases, conversations, or you know, how you report back to your exec teams post delivery, as well as looking at, you know, customer satisfaction and, you know, customer expectation around the kind of services they want to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to summarize those two then. So if Nudge feels like it might suit your situation, which is around registrations, so this is around us attracting and converting your customers to registered digital users. And the dashboard will show you exactly where you are to that adoption target. Whereas the Shift side of things is more enhanced, and it works on creating those digital advocates with the help of data insights and more targeted sort of re-engagement campaigns, if you like. So how this works is essentially a 4-step process. So if this sounds interesting, let us know you're interested, and we'll run through an exercise with you to assess readiness by looking at your current digital offering. Then, based upon where you are now and what the goals are, we'll determine with you whether Nudge or Shift seems to suit you best. And yeah, once everyone's sort of happy with that, we'll agree terms and get going, where we start with the strategy piece. So this is where we'll prepare the campaigns. We'll set up the advanced analytics on your platforms as well to assess user behavior, which lets us make recommendations on more sort of conversion rate optimized user experience a little bit later on. And then, yeah, once that's all mapped and the data's in place, we'll hit the go button. Campaigns launched and dashboards will be sort of activated. So this isn't necessarily a new concept for us. So as I said at the start, this is inbound marketing and marketing automation, and we've specialized in that for many years, sort of outside of the space, and taking many learnings along the way. So for instance, one of our clients, GJW Direct, they're a marine insurance company, part of Munich RE, in a very familiar sort of scenario to yourselves, where they've been interacting with their customers at the time and marketing themselves in a very sort of traditional and offline way, which made their cost per acquisition high, and also their support only available during office hours, and generally, you know, a little bit sort of behind the times, really. Their customer base was, again, familiar situation where potentially some of them quite reluctant to engage digitally. I'm hearing myself repeat there for some reason. There we go. And yeah, GW were kind of facing a similar sort of challenge to the housing space of shifting their customers online to enhance that experience and operate more efficiently. So we engaged with them. We designed and built them a portal called MyBoat, which enables their customers and prospects to essentially manage documentation relevant to their particular boat. And of course, at that point, we started with 0 registrations once it was launched. Under 2 years, we've managed to reach 14,000 and generate 14,000 registrations with a great level of engagement as well, using the same tactics that sit behind Nudge and Shift. So this has given them the opportunity to market to and engage with that 14,000 digitally, which in essence was pretty much impossible. It was impossible beforehand. So yeah, this is something that we've worked on for years now, and that we're sort of looking to bring into the sector. So yeah, it's one of those where it kind of feels like you know, why wait any longer to sort of help put this in place and make Channel Shift kind of happen. But yeah, if you would like to know more about this in detail, feel free to book a call with us, or there's information obviously on GetShift.co.uk as well. But yeah, we've kind of got time now for any sort of questions, if anyone's got any at this stage on Nudge and Shift, on the utilization of automation, on the GGW case study. Has anyone got anything they wanted to ask at this point with a few minutes left? I can't see your face.
Can I just ask a question? Just it's Sam from Cotsway here. Sue and Harpreet are on the call and may already know the answer to this actually, but I'm just wondering where this fits in if you're already working with us to provide a portal. Is this a kind of additional service, or it is?
It's a complementary service that will, obviously we've got the kind of development aspect we're working on, which is delivering your portal and getting that up and running and getting your existing customers migrated into that. This is essentially an always on kind of activation campaign, if you like. So it's about how do we drive people to that platform that's been built? How do we encourage signups and then turn those customers into advocates who will keep reusing that service?
Okay, thank you.
Just an observation, Jen. When we saw the slide that was talking about the relative cost of an online interaction compared with a phone call or whatever, that sort of calculation always prompts a sort of sharp intake of breath in our sector. Certainly it does in PCH, because we get, oh, they're just trying to save money. Presumably those calculations are based on time, and it would be really interesting to see those figures. How much time are we spending? How much time is the customer having to spend to book a simple repair, for example, compared with doing it online? If you've got the workings out behind those calculations, I'd be really interested to see them.
Yeah,
because I think that's an
point.
easier sell for us, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, every simple request, it's taken 3.5 minutes to deal with. This could be completely automated. Is an easier sell for us than save X.
Yeah. I think as well, Denise, you touched on a really important point before, which is that fear factor. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I was in the digital transformation at Holton, that was kind of the key element that we always came to encounter whenever we were actually working on streamlining processes and bringing new technologies in. Sometimes there's a fear that you're just trying to move people away from jobs. But with this type of calculation, what we're trying to kind of reframe is like that psychological way of thinking that organizations sometimes have, because, that cultural shift is reframing that the way the psychology in the organization actually works. And in your case, you're just beginning to try to break down that psychology down. And from my experience, it's about showing the benefits internally and showing that it's not about cost savings, but it is about reallocating resources, because a lot of people think that moving into a digital environment means that people can get left behind. But in my experience, it kind of works the other way. It allows you to make those able customers to self-serve and be, using your services in a very convenient way, but also it frees up important resource to target those who won't have the ability to actually join in and could be left behind either way. Then you're kind of allowing those resources to be available and to help those in the community who really, really need it.
And another tool that we're going to try with this, when we say to teams, look, this isn't a threat to your jobs, this is just make it possible for you to do more interesting stuff. Yeah. We're trying to get our operational managers to think about what that stuff actually is before we start those conversations. So we can say to people in the allocations team, for example, this is all automated now. So it means instead of spending all day cutting and pasting, so on and so forth, you'll now be able to, and we want our operational guys to actually define what that is, because that takes the fear out of it.
I think it's just a matter of identity.
Your manager has said that you'll spend less time on this and more time doing that specifically.
Well, just thinking about what you just mentioned in terms of allocations, if you think about it, 75% of tenancies, or this was the case at Holton, failed within the first 6 weeks. So what we did when we aligned the allocation service is that team, rather than just dispersing it, we specialized half of the team in supporting new customers through the start of their tenancy, so that we could have that provision in place, so we could educate potential new customers to maintain that tenancy. And that had a really positive knock-on effect for us as well, because it was a way of protecting our income ultimately as well, protecting those colleagues' roles, because ultimately, you know, there has to be an efficiency for everybody to have a role in place. And it also helped in the fact that we built the community to be a stronger community, because where there's less change, there's more sense of community, and the neighborhoods become, you know, what we strive for them to be. So I think it's a matter of identifying, I guess.
Bobby, how are you, Kate?
So what was that?
Rosemary.
I didn't get that, sorry.
It's all right, Mum. Don't worry, carry on.
Okay, so I think it's a matter of identifying per service what those potential benefits can be. And I'm not saying that it's a magic, you know, there's no silver bullet for anything, but those learnings come based on that culture in the organization and what those needs are. And that was my experience anyway while I was in the digital transformation team. And it was the same for other parts of the service. You know, we came across those changes and we realized that there was areas that we could reinvest those resources into.
That's why I'm interested to see that time calculation, because what we want to be able to do is say to operational managers, okay, you've got 30% man-hour saving because of this. What do you want your guys to do with it? Because then you're actually presenting the frontline staff who can be pretty good at subtly sabotaging implementation of your systems. You've got a plan for them. You're saying, okay, as of next September, you're going to be doing this instead of what you're doing now. And that changes the whole dynamic. It then becomes interesting and they're engaged in it. That's a real battle for us in Plymouth, to get staff to overcome that fear. And it's not just...
I don't think you're alone in that battle. For sure, I think that is a very common thing. Sorry, apologies.
I think generally the channel shift kind of objective and getting more people digitally and freeing up those teams to spend with those who need you is going to generally improve customer experience across the board, I suppose. I'm conscious, guys, we've just gone slightly over time. So has anyone got any specific questions they want to pop in before we leave for the day?
John's got his hand up.
Fire on, John.
Yeah, I'd just like to add there that it would be good to understand from our peer group how much effort, or is it built into people's objectives in terms of continuous improvement? Is that part of everyone's objectives? Do you proportion some of your time to look at continual improvement? Anyone?
Andy?
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. If you've got a website, it's not only is it never finished, it's never perfect.
Yeah.
And one thing that struck me when we went through that presentation, and I'm sorry if I'm going to tell some people what's blindingly obvious, I'm hoping you're already using Google Analytics to get some basic information about how your website's used. So you can get an awful lot from that. And that can drive a lot of your decisions, whether it's UI changing or functional changes. I guess there's a couple of other points that just are strung into my head. The ROI calculator, the kind of cost per transaction calculator, it's fair enough. I don't think anybody was worried about that to the last penny, but it's an indicator. But again, sorry if this is really obvious, be aware that the functions, whether it's Prodo or anybody else or extra CRM, have a cost themselves. So it's not all upside, and I'd be ready for that challenge. Having come from outside the sector and looking at your boat example, we've got a massive advantage over many of the people, other sectors. We know all our customers, we know where the names, we know their addresses. So the acquisition piece is massively easier in this sector than it is in most. So, and again, I don't disagree that you can do more to help adoption, but just using what you've got will get you quite a long distance.
I think generally what we've seen is quite a common thing that we speak to a lot of associations about, in that they've got customer portals and things live, but they've just not had the uptake that they were hoping for. So this is basically using the GGW example as something that works.
Yeah,
this is us using those tactics to sort of encourage that, basically. Yeah.
The first rule of adoption is by targeting and segmenting. you've already got them, and again, it's use what you've got before looking at something else. And one other point which I thought was really interesting from what I know of Halton, who are not too far from us, Monica, and you might be there when this happened. I thought this was a really bold move, is that they dialed down excuse the weak pun here, some of their phone support to nudge people, and I think that was quite controversial. I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. We adjust our services to various needs across the piece. There's no reason why we shouldn't do that. And let's have a go with things like that. But what worries me is that if Denise's experience is common, is that you're almost having to have the fight before you start about should you have it. Then all of this refinement is. It's kind of academic.
Yeah, that mindset piece is so key. Yeah,
it's characteristic of the sector. Historically, it's been a culture where an awful lot of people have old-fashioned admin roles, and they're quite wedded to them. The big battle, and John and I have this conversation endlessly. The big battle is the internal culture shift. The IT actually is quite simple. Close your ears, Jen, but none of this is new stuff. The battles are cultural.
They are, but I would say they're not impossible. So don't despair. We had the same issues at Halton, and I think once that fear factor is broken down and people can see the benefit of this automation coming through, they realise that actually it's making their lives easier. So it's very much as you would with a customer out there. Once somebody understands that something is beneficial to them, why would you stay away from it?
It turns into it channel shift by default, really. People will instantly go to an online provision because they know they get a better response from it. I mean, that's ultimately what we're looking at, is getting customers to channel shift by default and go to the channel that will give them a better response that they can trust. I mean,
I think it's almost around sort of coaching those people that is possible, and that's the route that they should be and can be taken, isn't it? Which is at scale very difficult, and as Andy says, making use of that customer data that you already have is key. But I think being able to automate it is potentially pretty difficult, which is what we're trying to do here, trying to make it as efficient as possible to get that uptake.
I think the uptake is down to how good the product is, how useful it is to people. People are pretty self-centered. If they can go onto the website and find all the information they need about 1,000,001 subjects, if they can go through the portal, book their repairs, do all sorts of other practical transactions, they'll use it, and if they can't, they won't. So no amount of marketing campaigns that PCH have ever tried has had much impact. It's the old rule of what's in it for them. So what we're trying to do is develop so there's more information, there's more functionality, there's more benefit in the product for them.
That's very, very familiar. That very sort of common, Denise, and what you're saying, that the sort of marketing campaigns that have been run so far haven't a great uptake. I think that's traditionally is because they're quite generic, and rather than being very, very targeted to a person's specific sort of situation and how they've been engaging with you, it can be quite difficult to sort of purpose those in a way that is encouraging to convert, where more relevant and more targeted ways do that, and that's what we're sort of saying here today, really. But
there's also that key aspect, isn't there, like you were saying, Jake, of sort of coaching people until these things become habits. So Andy made that great point around, you know exactly who your customers are, you've got all their contact information, or most of their contact information, and actually that provides a great foundation to sort of run this kind of activity on, because it's one thing to build a great product and reach out to customers in a sort of fairly ad hoc way to tell them about that product, but actually the more that we can consistently educate and coach and nudge people, the more likely they are to adopt these services as the default habit for how they transact with you.
And with automation being able to sort of accelerate that process really as well. yeah, I know we've taken more time than we had in everyone's diaries today. So appreciate everyone's sort of engagement and sort of opening the conversation towards the end there. That was really great. But yeah, if anyone does have further questions, I think we'll follow up with the slides and a means of sort of booking calls and with us. If you've got more questions on there, feel free. But yeah, we'll have another session in 3 weeks. So we'll announce what that topic will be in the coming days, the coming couple of weeks. So yeah, hopefully that was beneficial to some of you and some of you took something away from that. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the next one. So thanks again for your time.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks,
everybody.
See you.
See you all.
Bye.
Take care then.